Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we'll Masechtas Avodah Zarah daf Samach Hey. We're going to begin on the very last line on Samach Dalamud Beis. Rabbi Yehuda Shardale Kurvana. So Rabbi Yehuda sent, Rashi says, a teshura, some type of gift, as we continue to Samach Hey Amud Aleph. Vidrana b'Yomi Edom, says Rashi. That's the name of an Oved Kachavim. So he sent a gift to an Oved Kachavim on the day of their celebrating their idols. Amr Yadana by Doi Palach Vodos Kachavim. I know that he doesn't worship idols. Amr Le Rav Yosef Osanyu Ezer Ger Taishiv Koshi Kibula Bifnei Gimel Chaverim. We know a Ger Taishiv, as we said, even though it's a Machokas we saw in yesterday's daf. A Ger Taishiv is someone who declares in front of three people that he's not going to worship idols. So that's only referring to keeping them, sustaining them. And therefore, at that point, you have a chiyuv l'hachiyayso. 12 months went by, but for whatever reason, a milah hasn't taken place. Harihu kimin shiba avdikachavim. Then he, in that case, has the din of an akum. At least he accepted upon himself to do the milah, but he didn't do so because, as we saw, is a question whether or not you're allowed to give a matnas chinam to an akum. So perhaps in this situation, it was different. Okay, let's look at question 7. Rabbi Yehuda sent a gift to an akum on his Yomi Edom, and he says, I know that he doesn't worship idols. So Heichem Etar Shitaso Medasanya Ezu Ger Toishiv Koshi Kibulav Bifnei Gimel Umedasanya Ger Toishiv Shavulav Yud Beis Chaydish V'Loy Moyel Harihu Kimin Akum. So Hadasanya, when that which we said he has to accept in front of three people, and here maybe he didn't, is in order to hachyoiso, to provide him with like food and the like. And that which we said, if he's not moyel, he's like an akum. Hadasanya shlomo harihu kimin. That's like he's like a min. So actually, this is worse since he backed away from his commitment. So that actually pumfakert the way of reading this. There's no Rashi on this. Is that the fact that he did not accept upon him? He accepted upon himself, but he didn't do it. So he didn't follow through. So then that's worse. Rava amtule kurvana labar shishach. So Rava encountered these people in this location, Yomi Edom. Again, apparently these again were akum. So because I know these are not idol worshippers. Also, Yosef ad Savari bevarda. He noticed that they were sitting literally up until their necks in roses. Says Rashi, b'merchat shel v'radin. I don't exactly understand what that is. Some type of a bathhouse filled with flowers. The kaimens nus arumais, and they were engaged in all forms of illicit relations. Kamei. So he said, do these people are they shaykh to the world to come? So Amalei didan adifa tfei mihai. We are greater, we are didan, they are even greater. So Amalei tfei mihai, mihavi, how could it be even greater? Amalei atayin ikolaychu emasa de malchusa. You have the fear of the king upon you. Anan lo tahavilan emosa de malchusa. We do not have the fear of the melech, and therefore, because of that, we're not the same. Or what type of fear is there upon me of the king? So Adi Asmi, they were sinning. Asahu Paristika Damalka. There was this messenger of the king that came, or Malay, and he said, quote, Kum, get up. The boylach malka, the king needs you. Kinafik, when he went out, Ve'ozol, Armale, Eina Daboyla Mixilahu Bishusa. He said that Eina, which is the idol, wants to see you, and he saw bad on you. Tifka, and his eye came out. Look at Rashi. Ayin hamis tav lirois, the eye that has the desire to see, raschem ta'aker. Shari Kodesh Baruch Hu mamale tavaschem, that Hashem caused your desires to be full. Shaf shichasam misbareres, even your destruction, everything was revealed. Armalei Rava. In fact, the idol came out of this particular idol. You should have actually quoted this pasuk in Tehillim. B'nais Malachim, the daughters of kings, Bikurei are giving you honor. Nitzva Shegal Liamincha, that the queen to your right is Bekesem Oifir, has gold and valuables. So Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak Boile Memrule Mahacha, you could have quoted this post in Yeshaya, Mi'oilam lo shamu lo hazinu ayin lo ra'asa lo kimz lo secha, that the eye cannot see. Ayin lo ra'asa lo kimz lo secha, only God. Yasa lemechakeloi, those who anticipated him. Okay, all right. So then the Gemara continues with the following part of the Mishnah. So our Mishnah said, which is the beginning of the parak, that you're not allowed to do work for an akum if he specifically has you engage in Avodah Zarah or Yain Nesach. That's what the Mishnah began on Samach Beis Amud Aleph. However, Schar Lasos Ima Malacha Cheres, if he has you do some other job, Avabi Sharmulo Heavenly Chamishal Yain Nesach Mamakum Mamakum Schar Mutter. So you're allowed to take those wages because that's not really why he hired you. He hired you to do a million other things. He says, oh, by the way, while you're here, do such and such. So you're still able to get paid. Which the Gemara has some difficulty with that, as we're now going to see. Even though he didn't say, do this to me at the evening time, which, as you're going to understand, Lasusi Erev is less of an issue. Because basically, the question is, if he asked you to do it during the normal workday, so then it's understood that that's part of your salary. However, let's say you already finished your day, and basically you would have been paid anyway, you're supposed to get paid, and he goes, oh, by the way, I know you're basically about to leave, could you just do this for me really quick before you leave? And basically, you're already owed the money before, so maybe that money is not attached anymore to the Ayin Nesach or the Avodah Zarah. So that's the question. Is it only the Asusi Erev? So our Mishnah is not mashma like that, because it doesn't say. So for the Gemara, let's say you have a person that hires a Jewish worker, and Lasusi Erev, right before the evening time, when the money was already owed to the worker because he already finished a full day of work, only then Sechara Mutter. In so how do we reconcile this with our Mishnah? So Rabbi, okay, it's not a problem. Our Mishnah, you're right, is actually talking about specifically that time. As Rashi says, you're already obligated the wages, before you did anything with the barrel. So that's one answer. You can just say, okay, that's what our Mishnah is talking about. But you're right, in the middle of the day, you can't. Rabbi Omer lo kasha. He says, no, I have a different way of answering this. Had yarmale heavily me chavius b'mei prutos. Had yarmale heavily chavius b'pruta. So one is, he tells him to transport 100 barrels, and for 100 pruto, and you'll get paid 100 prutos. The other one is, he says, take each barrel, and each barrel you'll get paid a pruta. So at the end of the day, there's still 100 barrels. But the question is, did I say there's 100 barrels, and for you to complete your job, you have to transport all 100 barrels, and you'll be paid 100 for that. So the problem is, now you're getting paid, part of that wages of the 100, which is all lumped together, is part of Avodah Zarah, or Yain Nesach. And therefore that's a problem. However, if they said, you're going to get paid per unit, every item that you do, you're going to get paid a pruta, so then each one is separate, and therefore you should be able to be paid. Now, that doesn't mean you should be able to keep it all. However, says Rashi, Masnisatani mutter kagayin everly chavius bepruta. The nibzus chavius shel yain nesach minayim. So what are you supposed to do? In that case, Rashi says shadi pruta nara. So out of the 100 prutos, so you just take one pruta and you can throw that into the Amamelch, because we'll say that again, each one is separate. You obviously can't keep all 100 because one of them is yain for the payment of yain nesach. Inami, Rashi says, alternatively, lo shakol miyadachavim v'inach mishtaber. So basically, what you could do is you can say, I know you owe me $100. You know what? Just pay me $99, and no employer is ever going to complain about an employee saying, "Pay me less." Okay, and that you could do as well. V'sanya b'nechusa. So as a support to this, as Rashi says, heavily me'achavius b'mea prutos. So v'nimsas chavius shel yain nesach b'neim schara aser. However, chavius b'pruta, each barrel you'll get paid separately. V'nimsas chavius shel yain nesach b'neim schara mutter. So again, schara mutter doesn't mean, even though it's not clear, but Rashi points this very important detail out, doesn't mean you can keep all the salary. You have to throw out that one coin. So one of the 100 is yain nesach, and basically only you'll get paid if you do all 100. This is aser, but if he gets paid one pruta for each barrel, then it's mutter. Just has to throw out the one pruta of yain nesach, connected the yain nesach, and that's good enough. Question 8. Scharlas is a malacha cheres. Some be share malay heavily chavis than this. Beis oifin makminula begemara delafikach shari. So either lasusi erev, right, because you already paid, you already deserve payment because you finished your job, and they ask you, "Oh, I know you're done over here, not related to your job because I know I already owe you the money, but could you do this for me anyway?" That's allowed, or because it's not linked to your payment anyway. Alternatively, is when he says your job is me'ormilo heavily chavius bepruta, every barrel you'll get paid a pruta, and that's it. Okay. All right, which is the same question as TA 17. So that's the same answer. Okay. Let me just see if there's another question on TB19. No, not yet. Okay. All right. So let's keep going. And then the Mishnah said that Hasaychas Achamor Let's look at the Mishnah again, just a few blot away. So when it comes to someone hiring your donkey for transport, so also the din is similar, that we say like this, that so you can't receive payment for that, for him renting your donkey, because he's using it specifically for an isser. However, he wants to sit on it, and maybe he'll need it for his own transportation, his own Uber, his own Lyft. Even if he puts jugs of yayin on the donkey, then it's allowed. Okay, because that wasn't the deal. That wasn't the purpose of him renting your donkey, so it's allowed. it's allowed, meaning you can keep the payment. So Hasul Amali, the question is, Hainu Reisha. This case of the donkey seems the same thing as the employee. So Seifa Tzrichli, we need the Seifa. So Charleisha Leha, that if the donkey was hired for him to sit on it, but he puts his flask, he puts his yayin in it, the rental money is still allowed. Remember, is that to tell you the login, which is these flasks, lav dinahu oisve, that it's not. Let's go straight into Rashi over here. Seifa tzrichli lashmina the agra lav a login mekabel mishari, that the wages of the rental is not connected to the jugs. So legina shel yayin nesach lav darchel usve, that it's not normal to sit on it. Hilkach agro lav aleha kom misyayiv. So therefore, the wages are not connected to it. In other words, to sit on it could mean maybe you're going to sit on this pouch or this flask, which has yayin in it. So maybe that was part of it, and therefore it should still be usher. Or minhi, so hasaycher sachamor, someone who is a renter of a donkey, soicher meniach aleha ksusai, so the soicher has to leaves like some type of blanket leginasai, as well as, and this is the key word, as well as flasks, right? For that particular road, for the trip, you need to have mezainis for the trip. From then on, the owner of the donkey can say, no, that's too much. In other words, if you own a donkey, you don't want them to destroy like your rental car by putting too much on it. So we don't allow more than what is necessary. But it's understood, and this is part of the question, is that ginaso is part of the rental. That it's understood that he will have this as part of his travels. And therefore, when he rented it, even to sit on it, it should have been self-understood that includes his transporting of this flask, which has yain, therefore maybe it's usher to take these monies. Chamar maniach leha soirin, the tevin, a donkey, you place upon it wheat, like barley, and mezainas of shaloisa hayoim, and the mezainas is for that day. Mikan v'elach soichem akivulav. Afterwards, the soicher again could say enough. Okay, so that's the kasha. You're right. I understand that typically jugs are put on the donkey. Mia, however, ilo maisivle, if he wasn't put there, miamrinle nechile agra deleginasag, would we have the price deducted? So, certainly not. In other words, it's kind of like an added bonus that's put there, but the wage, the rental is not necessarily attached to it. In other words, you don't get paid extra money by having this item. So the reality is that it's really detached from the rental. Hey Chidami. So how do we understand this? If it's shchiach to buy food, so then why don't we say that he can't bring the food, right? So again, basically what happens here is that you have two people. You have the one who is renting it, and then you have the one who's like the driver. So the question is, if you can get to food, so then why do we easily? So then why do we have all this mezainis piled up on the donkey? The owner of the donkey, the chamar, should have the ability to be able to stop it. Now, let's say that there's no way to get food, so then why do we say that the renter can only can tell the guy, oh, you can only have enough for one day of food, right? The driver. Well, Okay, I understand the renter of the whole trip, the driver only 1 day, but if he can't get the food, so then that's problematic. So it's a little difficult to get to. From each district, from each location. So Chamar, the driver, who's an expert, who's done this a million times, he's pretty used to it, so he only needs 1 day food. And therefore, because that we're not going to require the passenger, if you will, to have food purchased every day. Fine. So as we mentioned before regarding this jug, the rental is for the person. There's no extra charge for the jugs or let's say the luggage. But if you don't bring it, doesn't change the price. So it's like if you get you get a taxi and you just jump in the taxi, or you say, oh, I have a suitcase, and he pops the trunk and puts in the suitcase. He doesn't charge you extra money for having one small suitcase put in the trunk. So it's the same thing. And if you say, oh, I'm not bringing the suitcase, so can I pay less? No, that's not how it works, because the rental is on the person. It's not on the item. Okay. All right. So that's the distinction. Rashi says, every place is where they stop is like a 1-day travel. Okay. So anyway, that's the idea, that when it comes to the donkey driver, the driver is more of an expert in where he's going, if you will. So therefore, he can only bring 1 day of food. However, the person he's transporting can bring food for the entire trip. Okay. Avodah de Rav Acha B'rei de Rav Ika, as we continue to Samach Hamid Beis, Havi Shavech L'hu Chamra L'oivdi Kachavim. It's a pretty interesting thing that he did. He, as Rashi says, Havi Le Moichel Lehem Yain. He was a wholesaler of wine, and V'derech HaMoichel Chavish Shel Yain Litin Gam HaChavias L'loitchen. It was the normal way that when you sell wine, that also the barrels would be given over to them. So what did he do? He used to pour the wine into these barrels of the kachavim, and so that's one. The ozil ma'avrahu ma'avra. So they would go to by the ferry. The yoim gulfi ba'agra. And then he would keep the barrels as payment. So he poured the wine in the non-Jewish wineskins, and then he ended up keeping it, which is pretty hard to imagine. Look at Rashi. V'rav Ika havi shafich lahu megulfi shalachu memenu v'yoy beziki didhu. So also Amalei Labai Amalei Kika Tarach Bahater Katarach. First of all, it's not a problem that he poured the wine because he was doing it beheter, because the only time it would be iser to be users once it hits the bottom of their flasks. Says Rashi, Sheyain enu neser ad sheyagia lekarkia shel ziki didhu. Ziki shel or these pouches of leather, gulfi shel cheres. Okay, that's just the difference between the languages. But again, that's one answer, that him pouring it is not a problem because it wasn't usher yet, because it hasn't hit their kalim. Okay, so that's answer. That's one reason, one issue removed. I have a harotz b'kiyumo delo nitz taru ziki. So the problem is, once these jugs become usher, he doesn't want these jugs to get ruined. He wants them to stay. So he doesn't want them to burst, because otherwise he'll need to provide them with another barrel. So in this situation, this should be a problem. The answer is Damasti Bahadayu, that he made some type of condition. Says Rashi, the inami mitzar ziki, that even if, let's say, the barrels would this jug would break, Lo yoiv lahu gulfi. I'm not going to give you anything else, right? So that's one answer. Inami the maisu peristiki bahadayu, says Rashi. Kalim rake, there was empty vessels, a kabel hayayin to accept the wine. He yates them in the naidais from the flasks, kshemis pokoyin, when they break. So it didn't really matter if they broke. No one really cared. Okay. But how is he allowed to be engaged in the transporting of this wine through the ferry? After all, he's causing effort with an isser. So dear Malay le Mavara, he said to the sailors, or to the people who were involved in bringing the wine from one place to the place, miyakara. He already said this to them from up front, as he put no effort in this. Rather, the transporting was done without him, says Rashi. Rav Ika Reish Naharahava. So he was the head of taking care of this river. V'yarmulu Mavrua was Safan. He said basically to these people, Mikar up front, Hari Yomim Rabim Kol Eish Sheyigo Nashim Alom Havir Bechinam. Because he was involved somehow. He had some control over these waterways. So he said, anyone who comes, just let them come for free. So it didn't matter if it was Be'isser, Beheter, just let anyone go. And therefore there was no tircha involved. That's one answer. Inami de Nikiti be Kitri. That he made some type of special knot. Says Rashi, Kishrit Simanhu Moisalahem Umakirim Hasafin, they recognized his knot. V'ihu lo tarach midi, but he again did not. He was not matriach. Says the next Mishnah. Says the Masnisin. Yain nesach shenaf al gavi anavim. So you have these perfectly good grapes, but unfortunately, yain nesach fell upon them. So yadichon vehein mutaris. All you need to do is rinse them with water, because there's no cracks. They're smooth grapes, and that's fine. V'im hayu mevukois asuros. However, if let's say they're burst open, which means they have cracks or something, then it's aser. So this is because obviously there's an issue that the isser will be absorbed into the grape. Nafal al gabi te'enim or al gabi tamarim. Let's say yain nesach fell on figs or dates. So im yesh behen b'noisen tam aser. If it provides a noisen tam, which means the taste enhances these fruits, then it's a problem, because noisen tam is aser, and we say tam ki'ikr, so that's a problem. Umaisa bisus benzoinan shehevi gurguris b'sfina. So she actually brought these groiguris, which are figs, but they're dried figs. So the barrel of yain nesach broke, the nafal al gabein, and it fell on her delicious dried figs. She asked the shaila, and the chachamim said that her dried figs were fine. Apparently, because since it poured on them so much that didn't enhance it, it actually made it worse. So it's a nice and tam hagam, which is why it's mutter. Which is zaklal. This is the general rule. Kol shahadasai b'nice and tam aser. Anytime when you have an isser that falls upon it and it enhances the flavor, then it's aser. Kol she'ebah b'nice and tam mutter. However, it doesn't add to it, but rather it detracts. Rather, it's nice and tam hagam. It's aser. And here's another example. If let's say you have vinegar that falls on grits, in that case, that's, as Rashi says, nice and tam hagam hu mutter. Okay, let's look at question 9. So one is vinegar on grisin, on grits, or yayin l'toich groigris. You have wine on dried figs, that doesn't enhance it. Maybe a moister fig, it's okay, but not dried figs. Okay, let's see the Gemara. So, masalister. This whole thing seems to be a contradiction, right? On one hand, we say it's aser, then all of a sudden we turn around and say it's mutter. So chasur metzvah hakatani. Im noisin tam hagam hu mutter. It says that if it's because we brought a story, but the story shows it's allowed, but we just said it was usher. But the extra line is nice and Talmud Gam is mutter. Masanam ben Zainan shay maybe groigris because there were dried figs. Misfin of an ishtabra chavi shal yayin nesach, and it broke. And it fell on them, and it kind of like made them not as good. There was this pile of wheat. The nafal leha chvisa the yain nesach. The yain nesach fell on this this wheat. So Shari Rava was vuni lechachavim. So he was lenient in this situation to sell it to an akum. Basically, Rabba bar liva Rava beged sha'abud by kilayim. Let's say you have a garment in which the forbidden mixture is very unclear where it is. We don't know where it is in the beged, says Rashi. Sha'ari kilayim chut echad. You just use like one stitching. Vein mim koima nicker. You don't know where it is. So even that small amount, you're not allowed to sell to an akum. And the obvious problem is, as Rashi points out, Shema Yachsav Yim Chol Yisrael. Because in turn, who says that they're not? An akum is allowed to wear kilayim. They wear shandas. The problem is, he's not allowed to sell it to a Jew. That can happen. So Rashi says, Yisrael. So why would we allow him to sell this pile of wheat to an akum? What happens? The akum turns around and sells this wheat to a Yisrael. So our answer is, it says, then maybe you should not provide a saddle for a donkey. It says, not to provide a saddle for the donkey. But you are allowed to provide tachrichin for a mace mitzvah. Now, my taima low yishim asl is zvinu Yisrael. So achinami asl is zvinu Yisrael. Not sure why they have to give another question. Okay, so again, apparently the concern is that we don't want it to be sold to a Yisrael. Says Rashi, tachrich l'meis nechsev b'meisim chavshi kivan shemeis adam nasa chashim in a mitzvahs. Okay. Fine. So Hadar, fine. So Hadar Shara wa mitchinhu. So then he went and he allowed him to grind the wheat. Well, mifhinhu was vininhu amikachavim, and then basically sell it to an akum. Shalom b'fnei Yisrael, when there's no Jews that are around. So that could be less of an issue. That since Shalom b'fnei Yisrael, says Rashi, Di'chaz Yisrael, Yisrael Chavri Mazon Lehil Chachavim, because if you would actually have seen this, Hadar Zavan Le Ihu Miyad Chachavim. If another Jew saw that you sold it to an akum, they're like, oh, it must be that this is allowed, then he'll buy it from him. The Savar Pashel Heter Hayesh Yisrael Afa. This is referring to the bread that was baked and sold to an akum. So you can't do it where a Jew is around because he'll think that it's good bread. He can buy it from the akum, which is not allowed. Tanan yain nesach shenaf al gabi anavim yedichin vehin mutaros v'im hayim muvkais asuros. If there's cracks in it, muvkais in, shin muvkais low. So without cracks, it's not a problem. So what was the issue with the whole this whole wheat or the grapes? Amar Papa shani chiti hoyav agav sirehen k'muv koistamin. Since wheat has cracks in it, so it's like this situation of like being burst open. There's a greater likelihood of yain nesach to have gone inside of it. So again, if you do it shaloi b'fnei Yisrael, it's not a problem because then the akum you can sell it to him, and then no yid is going to buy it back from him afterwards because he's going to think it belongs to the akum, and therefore because of that, it will have avoided that issue. Okay, we're going to stop there. Question 10. Yainesa shnaf al gabi anavim ma'adinai. So We didn't completely get to that. Okay, we'll see that question really next stop. Question TA17 we did of a Seichas Apoyel. TB19. Avodah Rav Acha Bereid Rav Ika Havishavich Chamrel Akum. He poured wine to the Akum. Yoyev le Gulfe Ba'agra. Mahach Shash Bezeh. What was the issue? Kishetarch B'Hatera. Be'ez Oiven Ein L'Chayshish L'Hachi. Samrinan, that's what I wrote. Lech L'Nazer V'Zeh Chayshish Hu Oisa Avera. Avol Im Oisa Netzeh Lasusi Erev. This is totally wrong. This is totally not the correct answer. I guess I got a little bit confused what this was. So let's get the correct answer here. So the reason why he was allowed to do this is he was allowed to pour it because it was still beheter, and it wasn't an issue of tircha because since he was involved with these sailors, the people that are involved in the river crossing, so he told them already about this originally that anyone could cross bechinam. So therefore he put no effort in this. Rather, just transporting was done without him. Alternatively, he made a special siman, and therefore they recognized it, and therefore there was no tircha involved. Ad kan.